binomial equations. Now, what's the one thing I always tell you? If you're solving an equation, you need to first get an equation set equal to what? 0. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind today. You always have to get it set equal to 0. We're going to talk about some other things. So first, I want to talk about the sum of cubes. All right, so when I say the sum of cubics or cubes, stop. That's not what I'm saying. Behave. That means that I have a perfect cube added to another perfect cube. When I am solving this, I am going to factor it into a binomial times a trinomial. That binomial is going to be a plus b, and the trinomial is going to be, stop, a squared minus ab plus b squared. When we go to solve it from there, this first one, you're going to set equal to 0 and solve. This second one, you get to solve with the quadratic. All right, so when we separated it into a plus b times a squared minus ab plus b squared, that means you're going to solve the first one by setting equal to 0 and the second one by the quadratic. Okay? The same thing happens if it is the difference of cubes. If it's the difference of cubes, that means I have a to the third minus a to the b. That factors into a binomial of a minus b times a trinomial of a squared plus ab plus b squared. Again, this one you're going to set equal to 0 and solve. And this one you're going to solve with the quadratic. So this is where I want to start today. All right, so here we go with example number 1. So let's say I have x to the third minus 8 equals 0. No. The first one is a perfect cube, right? This is actually x to the third power, so it's x times x times x. So in my formula, technically my a would just be x, all right? The second one is 2 to the third power, is the same as 8, right? So that means my b value is going to be 2. So we're going to factor it by what it says up here. This factors into a minus b, or x minus 2, times by a squared, which is x squared, plus a times b, well, x times 2 is actually written as 2x, plus b squared, or 2 times 2, which is 4. All right, what are you lost on?
So basically, where do you get the minus 8 equals 2 squared root of 3?
2 squared. 2 to the third power is the same as 8, right?
Right.
2 times 2 times 2 equals 8.
Just got to find like an exponent for 8 or something.
You've got to break that one down. So today, in your math, if the first one's a perfect cube, chances are the second one is going to be. So if I needed to go over here and say, well, I know 8 is 2 times 4, and 4 is 2 and 2, right? I have 3 2's. That's the same as 2 to the third power.
Just break it down.
Break it down, all right? So now, once we have it into this factored form, the first one we're going to set equal to 0 and solve it. So our first 0, our first answer is positive 2. The second one, we have to put in the
Box.
quadratic. In the quadratic, our A value is 1, our B value is 2, and our C value is 4. Right? 1, 2, and 4. So I have negative B plus and minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over, oops, I guess that's supposed to be a 4, sorry, all over 2A. So underneath my square root, I have 4 minus 16, or negative 12. So I have negative 2 plus and minus the square root of negative 12. It's a negative under there, which means we take out a what? An I. Thank you, Reagan. We take out an I. And 12 breaks down into 2 times 2 times 3. So I have 2I square root 3 all over 2. And now what reduces? The 2's. Thank you. All the 2's. So I also get negative 1 plus and minus I square root 3 all over 1 because those canceled. So you'll notice that I have x to the third power when I started. I have to have 3 solutions for x. So I have 1 solution here from my first parenthesis, and I have 2 solutions here from my second parenthesis. These 3 answers are my final solution. All right, let's try an adding one. Logan, seriously, this is one of the hardest days. I need you to get your head out of your butt, decide you're going to focus, and let's do this. Okay? Thank you. All right, here's example number 2. So let's say I have 8x to the third plus 27 equals 0. So the first one is actually a perfect cube. It is 2x times 2x times 2x, right? So my A value is 2x. The second term is also a perfect cube. It is 3 times 3 times 3, or my B value would be 3. So now I'm going to factor it in the binomial and the trinomial. The binomial was A plus B, so 2x plus 3, times by, the trinomial is A squared. Well, what is 2x times 2x? 4x squared, thank you. Minus A times B, what's 2x times 3? 6x. And then plus B squared, what is 3 times 3? 9. All right. Now, our first parenthesis, we set this equal to 0 and solve it. So I have 2x plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3 over, I get 2x equals negative 3, and divide both sides by 2. So my first answer is negative 3 over 2. But I still have to get 2 more answers, because I've got to solve 3 of them, right? Quadratic formula. Negative b is going to make that a positive 6, plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So underneath that square root, I got negative 108. I hope everybody else got that too. All right, so we know since there's a negative under there, an I is going to come out. What else do we know? If I have 108, what can I break that down into?
9 and 12.
All right, let's do 9 and 12. 9 is 3 and 3. 12 is 4 and 3.
Yep.
And 4 is 2 and 2. So I have a group of 3's that get to come out, and I have a group of 2's that get to come out. So 3 times 2 is what? So we have 6 plus and minus 6i square root 3 all over 8. What does this all reduce by? 2. 2 goes into 6 3 times. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. So our final two answers are 3 plus and minus 3i square root 3 all over 4. So these are the two methods you're going to use anytime it is either the sum or the difference of cubes. All right? Which you will be able to tell, and we'll do a couple more examples in a few minutes. If the highest exponent is to the 4th power, we're going to factor that like we do when it's squared, but just make it an x squared and an x squared in each factor. Okay? So let's talk about solving quartic. When you solve a quartic, you are going to factor and set factors equal to 0 and solve. All right, so for example, we're going to start with a really easy one. So example number 3, let's say I have x to the 4th minus 10x squared equals negative 9. First of all, what do we always have to do to our equation? We have to set it equal to 0, right? So we're going to add 9 over. So I have x to the 4th minus 10x squared plus 9 equals 0. Now I'm going to factor it like normal. I'm going to draw my x. 9 on top, negative 10 on the bottom. What are my sides? Negative 9 and negative 1. Thank you. So now, instead of saying I have x minus 9, what I have to say is because I have an x to the 4th, it's x squared minus 9. And instead of saying x minus 1, I have to say x squared minus 1 equals 0. So now I'm going to set each of those factors equal to 0 and solve. X squared minus 9 equals 0. I add 9 to the other side. I get x squared equals 9. We square root both sides. We get x equals plus and minus 3. You have to have the positive and negative. Do this one. I have x squared minus 1 equals 0. Add 1 to the other side. I have x squared equals 1. Square rooting both sides. I get x equals plus and minus 1. So my highest exponent was a 4. How many solutions did I end up with? 4. There have to be 4 solutions which represent the number of x's you started with. Okay? All right. Are you okay? Okay. Example number 4. Sure. Actually, give me one more after that. Thanks. Let's go with x to the 4th plus 4x squared equals 12. What do I do first? X to the 4th plus 4x squared minus 12 equals 0. Now what do I do? Factor. Negative 12 on top, 4 on the bottom. What are the sides of my x? Thank you. 6 and negative 2. Now we put them as factors. I have x squared plus 6, and I have x squared minus 2. What do I do with those factors? Set them equal to 0. So x squared plus 6 equals 0, and x squared minus 2 equals 0. I'm going to start by subtracting 6 to the other side. I get x squared equals negative 6. Yes, you can. Square root both sides. We get x equals plus and minus I root 6. Here, I've got to get x squared by itself, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I I have x squared equals 2. We again square root both sides. We get x equals plus and minus square root 2. So again, I had x to the 4th power. How many solutions do I have? I have 4 of them, right? All right, last example. Example number 5. Example number 5, 26 through 36. It says, find all real solutions by graphing. So let's start with, let's say I have, let's go with x to the 3rd plus 3x squared plus 2x equals 0. So you're going to grab your graphing calculator. Put this in y equals. Please push graph. It crosses the x-axis how many times? 3 times. You need to find what those 3 answers are. It crosses 3 times. So we're going to go second. Trace down to 0 because that's what they are. There are zeros. Move to the left of the first one. Hit enter. Move to the right of the first one. Hit enter. Your very first 0 should be -2. So on my paper, I write x equals -2. Now I do second and trace. Go down to my 0. I go to the second one, left of the second one, hit enter. Go to right of the second one, hit enter, and enter one more time. What is my second 0?
0.
Nope, that's the third 0. -1, I agree with Orion. So I can just list them right here, -1. And then the third 0, Hunter found already, which was 0. So this last section, that's all you have to do is use a graphing calculator, find your zeros. There's not any math other than if you have to get it set equal to 0 first. That's it. Okay? All the math happens in 10 to 24. All right? Okay. So I know some of you, just in case you decide to start looking at it to begin with, number 10. Looks like this. We have x to the 3rd plus 64 equals 0. If it's in that form and it's only 2 terms, right? The first one's a cube. What do you think the second one's going to be?
Cubic.
Right? So this is going to be the sum of cubes for number 10. All right?